Hi everyone, I'm Long Litz here, the CEO of October Health. We're here for another episode of Pressure Point. I'm really excited to have Susan Turton with me today. We're going to be chatting, I think something a little bit different for our listeners. We're going to be chatting about the proactive steps that you can take to really handle the pressures of modern life. Lots to unpack there. And with that, Susan, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Getting to share some stories I hope that are valuable to the listeners.
Most definitely. So thank you. And I think before we get into some learnings, I think just really valuable for everyone who's watching, just to have some context on your background. You're now a senior HR business partner at Old Mutual. That's 12 countries across the continent. So a very tall order. And obviously a lot of hard work, a lot of effort to get you to this point. So yeah, give us a bit of a taste for that background.
Sure. So I guess an organizational psychologist by profession, but that's not where I started. So 29 years ago, completed matric in South Africa, and 2 days later I was in my first job in a corporate environment. So not much holidays for me. And that's where I started my banking career.
Okay.
And started at the very bottom of the hierarchy as a ledger clerk. So things were very different in those days. But I certainly learned how to be in an office job and have your chair and your desk and your pile of work and take instruction and started to learn my ways of working in a closed environment, closed windows. I'm an outdoor person, so that was quite something to learn. It was. And, you're in a very structured environment. So you start then, you end then, and you have your breaks in between, and then you must be back at your desk. So started to learn ways of working in a corporate environment, and then obviously moved through different roles as I started to move up that hierarchy, which was great from an experience perspective. And then after a number of years, started to progress my studies as well. So I did 7 years of that. That was obviously a lot more free. So it was a wonderful time in my life, a lot of freedom in terms of my way of working and learning self-discipline to get to your goal of where you're waiting to go to. And then I switched through a couple of different jobs and then into the company I work for now, which is Old Mutual. So it's been 29 years since then, 23 years of which I've been at Old Mutual.
Wow, it's a long time.
In HR consulting, it is a long time. So you can imagine the embeddedness of my ways of working. And through that time, I started in HR consulting, and then I moved into a specialist role as head of an organizational development department team of one.
For such a big organization, it's going to be an easy task.
Yeah, but definitely learning how to do work through other people and working as a team, collaboration, so that you can get portfolios done. In that time, I was also head of well-being for a period, head of group strategic change management.
Sure.
And then I moved over into our Africa regions a year and a half ago now, which I'm loving as well. So back into a generalist role, a lot of consulting, a lot of support, a lot of coaching, a lot of practice work, a lot of day-to-day work. And what I find is that my experience so far is invaluable, especially when I get the opportunity to share that with new employees coming in, and I support them and I coach them through how to make changes to enable themselves to work better and smarter.
So yeah, 23 years at Old Mutual, but it sounds like you've had a number of different chapters within that. Sounds like I think each one of those roles completely different, exposure to different specialities, different people, different regions. Yeah. So it sounds like quite the place to build a career.
It's been amazing. Yeah, we always say our blood is green, and I'd have to say mine certainly is.
Wearing green, not black. Awesome. So I think something which we wanted to chat about as a general point is, Old Mutual, I don't know what the official rankings are, but always, up there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top brands on the continent, employer of choice. With that, right, a great place for employees to work, but also a demanding environment, right? You hire the best and you demand the best from your employees. So what's important is that they get that balance right. How do you sustain high performance? How have you sustained high performance? You've been there for 23 years. It's quite a demanding culture, and you have to perform. So can you tell us, maybe to start off, a bit about your personal story?
Sure. So I guess just from balancing performance and self in a role is really important. So if you aren't looking after yourself and being mindful around that on a day-to-day basis, just to sustain your performance for a company, within a company, or if you're a consultant outside of a company, becomes very difficult, becomes challenging. And you might find that your energy drains and you don't wake up in the morning excited to be there. I think a lot of people find themselves in that place. I think a lot of people feel that they do their job because they have to. When I was studying, I did a lot of research around organizational commitment. And you have essentially 3 categories of people and types of commitment to an organization. One is effective commitment, which is, I want to work here. I'm excited to work here. I choose to work here. You have continuance commitment, which is I feel that I have to because I am stuck. I don't have many choices or options and I need to survive. And then you've got normative commitment, which is the loyalty to whom you work or for whom that you work. And so you make yourself stay as a result of that, and you're perhaps socialized into believing that that's what you should do. And of course, then as we've progressed through different generations, that has started to shape and morph, and people have different reasons for why they work and why they perform, and whether or not they get excited about the work that they're doing and energetic, enthusiastic about that. So I'd say that I've always been a hard worker, self-imposed goals. I love to be competitive because I think, you learn so much that way because you challenge yourself. But it can take a toll. And I guess a few years ago, when I had the opportunity to look after our well-being portfolio for the group, I started to research more into well-being. Old Mutual's amazing in terms of the opportunities, the tools, the work that we do around well-being to support our employees. We have a number of different teams that specialize in that and supporting the organization. And of course, every business area has support mechanisms for their team members because performance is important, but more than that, because the person is important. And so head of well-being, researching around health and well-being and really trying to understand, what are the past trends and what are the emerging trends going forward. And I always like to put myself into the shoes of what I'm researching because I test it and I go, oh, that's interesting, and just start to challenge. And what I started to realize is that I think in the past, we've done a lot of focusing around support from a health perspective on ill health. We've got mechanisms in place to support ill health, and we want you to be well. And I think that we need to spend equal amounts of time, we are doing that, around health. And so there, I think, is still a lot of stigma for people generally worldwide around the notion of health and what that actually means. We all have health. I like to say your health is your wealth, just like if you're dealing with your finances, time is your best friend. And to grow your wealth, you need to make sure you are practicing good daily habits around whether you're spending, whether you're saving, whether you're budgeting for something, whatever it might be. It's the same with your health. You need to take care of it today so that it counts thousands of days down the line, because today's choices matter for thousands of days down the line. So I started to test this with people, and a lot of great stories coming through, and it definitely seemed to resonate. We all have health. So on that continuum of health, where do you find yourself? Are you on the lower side of the scale, and you're on the upper side of the scale? Wherever you might find yourself, you still have health, and you still have an opportunity to focus on being energetic and enthusiastic so that you can perform well and be that high performer. So I guess that's where my curiosity really started and started to apply to myself. So what daily habit could I start to institute to make a change? And I didn't have New Year's resolutions last year. I chose to have a goal for my family because over the last 10 years, or actually 12 years, I got married on top of working. I had 2 children.
Sure.
none of it was easy. I had 5 miscarriages, and so there was a lot of focus around me in a way, but also not in a way that I was always in a healthy state. And I guess my stress levels also elevated. So having researched and started to put some practices in place for myself, my focus last year was to focus around health for myself and my family. It was quite interesting. I got to the end of last year and had a really big life-threatening event happen in my life. But it was a very important trigger for me. I sometimes need a big kick in the seat of my pants to make a big change.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Okay.
That was it, and I guess that's where things have really upped their game for me in terms of this is the time to change. From a mindfulness perspective, from a self-care perspective, I'm all about looking after others and my family. But what about me? As if I don't do that for myself, I'm of no value and use to others and of no value and use to the company that I work for. So how do I take care of myself so that I can be adding value to a mutual and caring for my family? And that's where the big change happened in my life.
So I think that's such an important framing, right? Like, you have to look after yourself. It's that cliche of the airplane and the oxygen mask. If you're not first putting on your oxygen mask, you're not of any help to anyone else.
Exactly.
And I think that all sounds, great in theory. But I think, talking to you briefly, I think there are 2 things that are apparent, right? One, you love research, right? And a lot of what you base your approach on is science and fact and research. And you're a very practical person. So for anyone watching and they think, okay, well, this concept of proactive care, not just waiting for a wake-up call, and I think you've used your wake-up call in a way to make significant change, and it's your burning platform. How do others find that motivation, and what are steps that individuals can take to start being a bit more proactive?
Sure. So another short story. I was coaching one of our team members towards the end of last year and into the early part of this year, who had reached a point of burnout and was booked off for a period of time. And I was spending a reasonable amount of time. We were spending a reasonable amount of time together, and it was so interesting just having conversations one-on-one, building a relationship. I think that's important. In Old Mutual, we have a strong foundation around relationships with people together.
Which is amazing for an organization of thousands.
Yes.
To lose sight of that.
Yeah, and that we say, it takes a village. It takes a village for everything. So the support that you have, the collaboration with others, working in teams. And so I was building a relationship with her, but also just asking questions to learn more about her. And in that questioning process, light bulbs were going on for her. And there were questions like, so tell me about who you are. Tell me about what you enjoy. What are your passions? What do you like? And she would look at me and say, well, I can't believe you're asking me this. I don't know. So it's okay. Homework. And next time we talk, I want to hear about these things. She must tell me.
Yes.
And her mind started to switch on around herself, and she started to become mindful. She spent time around thinking, well, what is it? And some old passions ignited and some new ones reignited or were ignited. And she started to say, oh, actually, I like this and I don't like that. And I had this dream in the past, and I think I'm going to try and take a course in that so that I can do this skill in the future at the same time. So she started to find some passions that started to energize her around who she was. And when she came back into the workplace, she brought all of that with her, as well as the structure that we started to talk about in terms of the way of working that she implemented every day. Structure to her work, structure to her planning, structure to her conversations, finding the right conversations to have in the right ways, but bringing the passions with her that has really made the difference in her life at working. So that's another example and story. If we had to go to some basic fundamentals, I don't know about you, but having big, hairy goals is awesome. I love it, but we often fail at achieving them. So I like to try and break things down into small habits. And a lot of the research talks about I guess if I summarize 3 important essentials: your lifestyle choices, what you eat, and how you exercise, and whether or not you exercise. 3 very important things. So if you can make the right lifestyle choices that create balance for you in your work-life integration, if you can make sure that you are eating the right things that are good for you, and those things are things like whole foods, plant foods, it doesn't say don't eat meat, whatever your choices are around that. We live in a fast world where we want everything now. Fast foods, fast deliveries, fast decisions, fast everything. I think that we need to sometimes slow that down a little bit so that you get a better outcome. That includes the food that you eat. It doesn't have to be fancy food. It doesn't have to be expensive food. And then exercise. You need to be exercising 3 to 5 times a week in order to keep your heart rate going well, your heart strong, your lungs strong, your body strong, your muscles fit. And all of that actually releases the right hormones. So we know serotonin, dopamine shots, all of that. Interestingly enough, if you look at the research, at least 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut, not in our brains.
Sure.
In the past, we thought that it's released in your brain because you think you feel in your head that boost of happiness, if you exercise or you're doing something exciting. Same with the dopamine. But the dopamine is 50% produced in the gut. But produced in the gut means, is your gut healthy? So what are you putting inside that's creating health inside and health outside? So it's a combination of factors.
Sure. Super, super valuable, and I think very practical. If I maybe take a bit of a step back or maybe break down some of what you've shared, I think the first point is taking that step back to get a bit of perspective, right? I think, it's so easy, in the day-to-day of the working world to not do that.
Yes.
So maybe, I think you did it because you were in this coaching relationship with that individual. For those listening, for organizations who want to implement it, how do you create those check-ins so people are doing it themselves, doing it with their teams to make sure that you're on track, or you're continuously just reevaluating where you're at? So are there tips to implement?
Definitely, yeah. So I like to have a healthy habit of focus time. For anybody that's using technology on your computer, if you're using things like Microsoft Teams, etc., there are functions that you can set to create focus time for yourself. For me, the first half an hour of every day is good to focus, and the last half an hour a day. That's what works for me. So I'm a big advocate of putting 10 to 15 minute slots into teams and groups of people's diaries to say, stop, pause, either practice a mindfulness exercise. So we sometimes put links into those meeting requests and people just click on them and go through the mindfulness exercise, or they sit and journal and make notes, or it's about saying, what do I want to get out of today? I think we have habits of starting work and you run straight into your emails, and then all of a sudden you're consumed with emails and then things that you've got to produce an answer for on that. And I don't think that that's always the greatest way to start your day. I don't get up in the morning, look forward to going to do my emails. It's not what excites me about work. No. It's the people, I love the people side of it, and what I can produce that will help somebody and help teams make a difference to the work that they're doing and the way that they're doing it. Where the eyes sparkle and you see the light bulbs go on and the energy increases. So I've also tried to make that switch, try not to get sucked into the emails first, try to say, well, what do I want to achieve from today? What are my key couple of tasks that will help me get there? And it takes the pressure off. I know that there's a lot on the plate, but if you can start to plan well, simplify, and task structure so that it's small habits, but start your day with something mindful, end your day with something mindful that says, well, did I achieve that? Didn't I achieve that? What could I have done better? What didn't work? What did work? What conversation could I have differently tomorrow that will actually help improve things? We also, as I said, very big on relationships. I'm a big advocate of, if you're a manager, a team manager, a line manager, we know from research again that the first line manager has the greatest opportunity to influence an employees' engagement levels. They like to hear it from their manager, not everybody else. So I always encourage line managers to spend 10 to 15 minutes with every team member one-on-one, having a very simple conversation, and it's not a task conversation. It's a hi, how are you? Second question, what's happening? And the third question, what can I help with? And we
actually listening to the answer, right? Not just going through the steps of asking the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's a focus on the individual, because what that starts to do is to say, well, maybe I can share a little bit about me with you, and maybe that does matter. And you start to build psychological safety in your team or your organization. Interestingly enough, another research stat is smile at people. I think we often don't do that. We just walk past people with these grumpy faces, and often we don't greet.
Yeah.
But the simple act of smiling is body language that tells the other person that maybe you are approachable, maybe you are a warm person, and maybe I can engage with you and speak to you. So it builds and shows a person a level of your openness and authenticity as well, and warmth. So it's almost it's a body language cue invitation to somebody to open up. And then I also advocate for a weekly team meeting where you spend 45 minutes to an hour with a team talking about the week, what's happened. So I suppose you could call that a little bit of a retro if you wanted to say, what happened, what are the key obstacles, and what do I need to do to help you get around and over those things. So it can be the task conversation, whereas you've had the personal conversation in the short one-on-ones every week. And so you create a routine and a cadence for people. They learn to expect that. And then they know, actually, I'm going to have a conversation with you, so I can raise this there and I can raise that there. And it creates certainty for you as a manager. You're getting through everything you need to, you know where your team is at. And it does build energy in a team because you are building team that way. So from a relationship perspective, from a focus perspective, and then within that, I mean, if you want to run your exercise challenges, there's a lot of apps you can use these days. And, if you're a cyclist, and the team's into cycling, there's things like Strava, and you can compete if you want to and track each other and egg each other on. And the team that I'm a part of, in our meeting every week, we have lots of great conversations. We talk a lot about work, but we'll also talk a lot about rubbish. And we laugh our heads off. And that act of laughing gives us an opportunity to de-stress, to blow off steam. And it
relationship builds.
Absolutely, yeah. It really builds our meaningfulness together as a team. So we play hard, but we also work hard.
Awesome. And you connect.
Yes, absolutely. On everything. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think something else which I just want to highlight, I think you kind of glossed over it, but super important, is both the importance of these, big, hairy, audacious goals, but quick wins and building momentum. So, again, if for anyone listening, if they're, things are not going their way, how do you kind of shift that momentum? Because I think so much of success is about momentum. And when momentum's against you, it's very difficult to turn the tide. Yeah. So what recommendations, if that's in your coaching context, in the work that you've done with teams, do you give to people to kind of be realistic in goal setting and shift momentum in a way that they feel like they're winning?
Yeah, agreed. So I think it really depends on the situation. Sometimes it can be something that a team is facing together. And in that instance, you need to tackle it as a team. It might be anything from a team build, or it might be a meeting to restructure the work, or to solve the problem around the root cause of what's actually happening. So if you hit a problem as a team or even as an individual, my first step would be to say, slow down, slow everything down. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. So slow everything down, take time out to say, can I reflect? What's happening around me? How do I feel? Why do I feel that way? Why do I think that this is happening? Make your notes and start to reflect, and then challenge yourself. Because I think sometimes we don't like to be challenged. We don't like to be challenged by other people. We don't like to challenge ourselves. We don't like to try and think differently. I always love this picture of the prism where you've got so many different sides and light refracts through that. And as you turn it, you see different angles and different refractions. And I think we need to do that when we're analyzing a situation to understand what to shift. So slow down, make your notes, and take time out to reflect on what's happening, how you are feeling, why that's happening, why you are feeling this way. And create bite-sized chunks around things that you think, okay, that's something to focus on, that's something to focus on, that's something to focus on. There's 3 small habits or 3 small tasks that I can take on. And if I take on those 3, it will actually have a bigger impact on what it is that I'm trying to shift or what I'm trying to achieve. So whether you're a team or whether it's just you. Another important opportunity is if it's just you, involve others for support, because they also bring different perspectives. Be open to the feedback that they may give you. It's a gift. You only know what you know.
Yeah.
You can't see yourself when you're in the picture. You're in the frame. It's the person looking at the picture that sees what the art piece really looks like. So invite the feedback. Ask people. Be open about it. If it's a tough conversation you need to have, they're always awkward. Ask the person and say, this is awkward for me, but could I have this conversation? Because I need to learn.
Right?
Yes, I need to learn. And it's because I want to build this relationship with you, not break it, but I either need to learn, I need to hear what you have to say, I need to know how you feel about it. So there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes when you are fixing performance or pushing performance to drive towards a high-performing person or a high-performing team. Another thing that is big is how we work together. And I love to use the analogy of a relay race because I think, we serve as a customer, but within an organization, when there's interdependencies, the next person in the food chain is also potentially my customer, and I'm a customer of the person that's passing work on to me. And I think sometimes when you are in the middle of that value chain, we like to say, okay, I've done my part and I dropped the baton. There it is. I've done it. But it wasn't necessarily passed on to you well, and you didn't necessarily do a great job of passing it on. It's not just about doing it here. So in a relay race, we know that you've got to have a good team. You've got to have your fast runner at the front and at the back. Runner number 1, runner number 4. And when you are running, you sprint as fast as you can, but you're holding tight onto that button. And as you're approaching the person, the next runner starts running, looking behind them, putting their arm out, and you put that button safely in their hand until they've got it. Then you slow down and stop, and they start taking off the running. Same thing must happen with your work, because that way I think that people start to appreciate each other. And again, you build enthusiasm and energy around the work that you do, and performance goes up.
Yeah, and I think I love the analogy because your work as an individual contributor is important, but your work as a team is equally as important. So it is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
I think, again, you touched on so much earlier. You spoke about kind of these lifestyle changes that you need to implement. I think there might be people listening saying that, that sounds great, right? I don't have enough time to do all these things that you're kind of referring to. I think you've already shared tips around focus and better probably structuring your day to allow time for these other initiatives. But again, practically, for anyone listening, what can they do to implement the change that you reference?
I think get up 30 minutes earlier. You can get what you need done at home, whether it's making your bed, getting yourself dressed, sit down to have your breakfast and a spot where you can eat comfortably. I'm the kind of person that grabs everything, rushes through, and then sit down and I start working and I'm eating at the same time. And that's not good because, again, living in a fast world, everything is fast. And you don't digest things properly, then you feel uncomfortable later. Because you're in a rush, you didn't prepare the right food. If it's a food issue and you don't have time to do that or you don't like to do that, find somebody that can do it for you. So you're still eating healthily and it's ready for you. You've got it in your fridge or your freezer or your cupboard. It's easy to grab. And so you focus on the doing part of it as opposed to the prepping part of it. And I think then, creating the spots in your day where you're being mindful. A lot of people have, through their work day, their 8-hour work day, or whether you're working 8 hours, 10, 12, 16 hours, meetings. And then when they get to the end of that day, they have all their work that they've still got to do. Another great tip is not to have your to-do list on a piece of paper and do it after your meetings, but actually set the time aside in your diary for those tasks to be done. Otherwise, they are not going to get done. And you will have a running to-do list that only grows every day. So in between your meetings or before you get the meetings in the diary, put that time in for those tasks to be completed. I always like to do that a week in advance. So if I'm on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if you want time with me, hopefully you're booking next week, because by the time I get to Friday, I take out all the non-meeting time in my diary for the following week. And I use that to task structure and create time to do my work tasks so that I'm actually getting work done in working hours. And then when my day is done, whether that's an 8, 10, 12-hour day or whatever it might be, I'll go for a walk or I'll get on my bicycle, which I love doing. It makes me feel great and happy. Stretch at your desk, just put your ankle over your knee and squish that knee down a little bit so that you're stretching up, stretching out.
Especially if you're sitting down every day. Right?
Yeah, I got rid of my work chair. Got rid of it. I got an exercise ball and I sit on that because I find sitting in a 1.5 to 2 hour meeting frustrating. I like to move. Now I can move. I can roll in it. I can bounce in it. As long as I'm not putting people off on a rather, but it's again, you're moving. So it's movement for your body. Out between each meeting, you can set your meetings up so that Teams automatically cuts your meeting 5 minutes short. Get up, go outside if you can, if you have the privilege of doing that, or just move in your workspace and then come back and sit down for the next meeting. So those are some of the quick and easy tips I'd suggest as well.
Yeah, so hopefully those are changes that anyone can make.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I think we unpacked a lot here. I think starting off with a bit of your personal story, I think your amazing career that you've had at Old Mutual and the passion that you clearly still have for the organization and for making change. I think ultimately it comes down to connection with people, building those relationships. I think if I had to summarize some of the key pointers, it's about taking that step back, reflecting, what's important, am I achieving those things? And even in a more macro level, are you doing things as efficiently as they can be?
Exactly.
Are there better ways to do things? I think you spoke about the power of feedback and how feedback's not a negative thing.
No, not at all.
It's really a gift that you're giving to that person. And I think if a person sees it as that, and if you see it as giving that person something valuable, it changes the way that feedback is given and received. You've spoken about, ways of being more structured in your day-to-day, ways of being more structured in your interactions with the teams if you're managers. You've spoken about lifestyle changes that we can all make, hopefully, right? And small tweaks in a way that build momentum, right? It's not just about, I want to go and run the two oceans. That's just being. You've got to start somewhere, and maybe it starts with that small win, which is a weekly walk around the block, right? So you've got to start small.
Walking meetings is another one.
I love walking.
There's to have a meeting, you can walk with a meeting.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of walking, even if it's inside a building.
Exactly.
Just walk around and, get the blood flowing of it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Susan. I'm glad you're doing so well and really appreciate your time. And thanks so much for joining us and sharing.
You're welcome. It's been really good to be here. Thank you, Alan.
Awesome. Thanks.